A reading from the Gospel of Mark. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what's not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need of food? He entered the house of God, where Abiathar was high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat. And he gave some to his companions." Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for humankind, and not humankind for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." This wonderful, pithy illustration from the Gospel of Mark. We hear Jesus reminding us, the religious authorities, and we who are pious and religious people, that rules that have been put in place, the way of life that's been outlined by God for God's people, including the Sabbath, that these are things that are made for our well-being. He reminds them, the religious authorities, who are scandalized because Jesus' disciples are plucking the heads of grains, and you're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. That's what they're reacting against. Jesus says the Sabbath is meant to be a life-promoting, self-sustaining, community-building practice that God put in place for the good of the people, collective and individual. And he says it's meant to uplift, uphold, and nurture human life. And if there's ever a time where a practice that God has put into place, such as the Sabbath, comes in between a person who needs to eat, a very basic meal, a common sense sort of need, if there's ever a time where that life-promoting practice of the community comes between what is needed for a person, for other life-sustaining activities, Jesus says, use your common sense. And if you ever need a measure, remember that these things are put in practice for the upbuilding and the sustaining of human life. So as a church, it is always our task to keep an eye on those practices once well established that are life-giving, were life-giving when they were put into place and continue to be so in the life of the community, but sometimes there are extenuating circumstances where the common wisdom and the wisdom over time needs to be superseded by something that is common sense and life-sustaining in the moment. One might draw some conclusions about some of the amendments to our Eucharistic practices through this time with the COVID-19 pandemic. But there are other places in our common life where we might want to take a critical eye and make sure that the ways of life to which we're adhering are in fact still life-giving, and that they are practices that give life to us as a community, not us pouring out our life in pursuit of maintaining a practice. And there's all sorts of times in our common life in church where we've made that critical decision together to discontinue one thing, or pick up a new thing. So in this time of rebuilding, this time of sustaining ourselves through these extraordinary pandemic-ridden times, let us remember this encouragement from Jesus to maintain the practices that God has given us, but to maintain them with an eye to being critical and seeing, is this practice sustaining us in the way that God intended? And may God bless you in these wanderings and in this lifting up of God's purpose amongst us. And may God bless you and God keep you this day and always.